Yes.
Well, hello, everybody. It is Summer and
Jen
with the Emotional Entrepreneur Show. We're here every Tuesday, and we are so excited to be here because we cover something every week having to do with both your personal and professional life, but having to really do with your emotions and business. So today, what are we talking about?
Client magnetism. Woohoo!
Client magnetism. This is such this is such an important subject because I know we're all, as business owners, entrepreneurs, impacted by this. This is something that is part of a strategic plan. And if it's not, it really should be. So again, we're talking about client magnetism, attracting your ideal customer as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, whether it's a service or it is a service or a product. So valuable, so important. I know that there's been times where I wasn't really clear as I began, even during, the last few years, where if I had an event, if I wasn't clear, I wasn't drawing the people because I wasn't speaking to the demographic that I wanted to. And so if I wasn't granular about this, then I wasn't speaking to my clients. I wasn't reaching them. I wasn't able to help support some of the things that they needed. So, Jen?
Yeah, this is important because a lot of us obviously are entrepreneurs, or maybe you're just promoting something of yours. Maybe some people are like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm like, yeah, if you're selling something, yes, you are.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think it's so important that we understand how we're presenting ourselves. And then when we're wondering, oh, how come nobody's buying from me? It could be because of your messaging. Most likely it's your messaging, it's your branding, it's that you aren't showing that you're clear. It might be clear in your head and it may not be, but either way it goes, if it's not clear to the person on the other side, I love this phrase, a confused person doesn't buy. And so this is something that we need to be paying attention to, because, and I actually did an email blast about this topic last week and to my community, and it's a great topic because a lot of us are always in that space of like, man, how come nobody's engaging? How come nobody's buying? And I always equate it to because it isn't clear what you sell or what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so important because, one, if you don't understand your clients or your potential clients, how are they supposed to understand you? Right? How do they know that you're actually speaking to them? And or not, and I don't even think, Jen, and I'm going to go back to something that you touched on, if you're selling something, I don't think even if you're just selling something, but if you're having an event where it's free, where you're doing a webinar or something live, and you want people to come to that, who are you talking to? What are you saying to them? What are the details regarding that demographic that stand out to you? Have you researched why they would be attracted to your product or want your product or be interested in your product? And I think research is undervalued. I think that there's a lot to it because that speaks to the need. It speaks to what's out there, what isn't out there, what you can contribute towards the research. And also, if it's something different, but yet you know your market, it's going to be exciting because it might be something they haven't tried yet. So being able to speak to that market, being able to do your research and identify your demographics, their behavior, pain points, all these things are so important. We're talking about emotional entrepreneur here, and talking about behavior. So have you looked at the behavior of your demographic? Do you go to the different social media sites to look at their behavior when they're online, what they're looking for, what they want solved, what they're feeding into, what they're talking about, what they're posting, how you're commenting? I mean, there's so many things, because if what you're saying or what you're trying to sell or what you're trying to pitch is not resonating, you're going to go flat. It's going to go flat. So, Jen?
Yeah, I agree. And, one of the things that I think about was when I was in design school, I took a lot of different things, and one of them was advertising. And I'll never forget, one of the litmus tests, I guess, was like, if whatever you create, so how this applies to all of us out here is that think about the posts that you do, and think about some of the graphics you create for, an event or something you sell. And the one thing that I never forgot that from that class was that if it takes me more than 3 seconds to figure out what I'm looking at, it isn't effective. And so many times when I see people put graphics together, and I get it, I am a graphic designer, but when they put their graphics together and I'm looking at this thing that they're sending me to share, I'm like, I don't even know what this is. Yeah. And imagine I have the ability to talk to somebody that made it and sent it to me and ask, okay, what is this? What's this for? When is this? Does it cost anything? I mean, think about all these questions you have when somebody sends you something. And if it is that many questions and it isn't clear in like 3 seconds that information is there, you lost that person. They have scrolled on. They have scrolled on. And so that's something that I always thought about, that if it takes me that long to figure it out, it's not going to be effective. And not only that, imagine when you don't have that friend to ask, like, okay, what is this? What's going on here? What is this? Is this an event? Is it free? Who's it for? Think about how many times you don't have the opportunity to ask that person directly. You don't got time. You have moved on, and goodbye to your potential sales, goodbye to that ticket sold, goodbye to, joining your webinar. And I think that's something we can take from, design, that think about whatever it is that you're writing, you're posting, whatever it is, to attract those clients. Is it clear what you're selling? Is it clear what you're trying to convey? And if the answer is no, that's also something to take a look at, that, okay, how do I change this so it's clear, and that it's not that, and this is where it gets tricky, because sometimes you just need that hook. Maybe it's that draws you in, so then the person will want to read more. But I think the danger that I see sometimes is that it's not clear, or it's completely cluttered. Yeah. and then it's even more confusing at what you're looking at. So just some things to think about when you're putting some content out there.
Absolutely. So Bibiana says, follow the data and analyze everything. She also says, is this like the books that are a paranormal, a shifter, Christian romance? Well, great example, Bibiana, because when you go into a bookstore, Bibiana, by the way, is an incredible author. So get to know her, reach out to her, follow her. But here's the thing. When you go into a bookstore, when you go into a library, they're pointing you in certain directions. They're giving you they used to give you a card catalog, but even right. But even when you go into a Barnes & Noble, you go in there and they've got things separated: self-help, wellness, romance, nonfiction, certain types of nonfiction, history. You've got so many different things, but they know that you're going to be confused and not know where to go and not want to come back. Have you ever been in a store where, absolutely, Bibiana, have you ever been in a store where you're like, oh my gosh, it's such a mess, it's so chaotic, that you're like, I'm just going to turn around and I'm just going to leave. I can't.
It's called Ross.
Girl.
If you can handle the mess and get that deal, more power to you. But yeah,
oh my word, I'm serious. Like, there are just certain places where you're just like, yeah, no. And there are people who absolutely, that's kind of the game that they play with themselves. Like, if I can get through this stuff and get the deal,
yeah,
Boom, right? Okay, but I'm not one of those people. I'm one of those people who are like, out, I'm out. See ya. Mm-hmm.
To be honest, like TJ Maxx clearance aisle. Whew. Yeah.
I went to one of those stores to find some luggage with a friend last weekend. And I was like, let's just get to the luggage because this is too much.
You're like,
It's overstimulating. And I'm like, I need to get out of here. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't know.
and then it's worse when it's crowded in that place.
It was super crowded. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Little story. In the 80s, yes, I grew up in the 80s. Yes, I'm not going to tell you exactly how old, but in my 50s. So I grew up in the 80s, and mall culture was awesome, right? That's where you went to the mall, you bought your things at the mall, but you also, your friends met there, you met at the movies, because most malls, that's what this mall is like near my house. It is like busy all of the time, which is like, yay, that they've got those stores. What are those stores called? Like they sell, things for less. There's like a lot of shops, purses shops, and It's like, oh, what are they called? Like outlet malls. Like it's like a high-end outlet mall, right? But so it's always, always, always busy. So Bibiana says TJ Maxx clearance aisle for real. Bibiana says every hot guy in the world was there on Saturday. Yes, they were. So, or in Santa Cruz, they were on the beach surfing. So, or skateboarding. So anywho, that's what this mall is like. This mall is so busy all the time. And then to top it off, when you have that chaos going on in the store and that messiness, okay, if that's what you want your brand to be, so be it. But I think I'm going to go back to what you mentioned, brand identity, right? It's something that Jen and I and team are working on regarding having a memorable brand, because there's something we're coming up with right now. So we're having to look at the logo. We're looking at the colors. We're looking at colors that resonate with our target market. We're looking at our messaging. We're looking at all of these things to create a brand. And so for us, we need to do the research. We need to be cognizant and really review what's going on in the world, what's being researched, what's not being researched. And also, as Jen said, if you've lost somebody within 3 seconds, I mean, I don't even think it's 30 seconds. I think it's just nanoseconds these days, right? It's like, you better have a really good hook or tagline. And part of that hook or tagline is that logo. And, as we work as a team, we're honest. We go through our colors. We go through what the logo looks like. If the logo, and Jen's the graphic designer, so when she creates something, she's telling us this could tell a story. This is how we could market this. This is how this logo could speak to what we're doing. And that's so valuable. So when you're working with somebody, I mean, it's great to have things that you can create in Canva. That's beautiful. But when you're looking at creating a brand, somebody like Jen, who is a graphic designer, is going to be able to not only create multiple things that will reflect your brand, but they're going to tell a story. They're going to have color where she's looking at the colors that not only match, but colors that also tell a story, or colors that resonate with your target audience. So all of these things are really important when you're looking at client magnetism. This is so, from research to crafting a compelling value proposition to your brand and marketing, leveraging your creative marketing or content, all extremely important. And I know that, we talk about these, or rather, let me step back. We mention these things, but here we're going into a little bit more detail because we've been there. We've absolutely been there where we have been too broad about our demographic and we didn't get the outcome that we wanted. Right, Jen?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the phrases that we hear all the time is the, niche down, or, riches are in the niches.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, I think I resisted. I don't want to say I resisted. I went through a period where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know who I want to help. I can't even help myself. And so I was lost. And so I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. If I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know how to even convey this. fast forward, I niched down. So it's like, money mindset for creatives. And then I was able to blend the two worlds. And I got to tell you guys, as soon as I did that, everything else became smoother. I don't necessarily say easier, but it became smoother and clearer, because now it's like everything that I do, it's very specific to a certain group. Of course, can the material, like, can anybody read my book? Sure, of course. It's all applicable, even if you are like a scientist. But if I just said money mindset, it's so broad. But then, but when I've tested this in different platforms and whatnot, when I said creatives, and then I spoke to that, even when I write in emails, right? To the, an email blast, I'm very specific. I'm talking to one person, and it's like I'm getting so much feedback, and it just feels so different where I'm more clear. And so now it's attracting people. And not only that, even energetically, then you start to draw in like your community. And so now I'm starting to see this happen on the back end of the things I'm doing. And I'm thinking like, man, this niching thing works.
Yeah.
And it's just getting really clear about who are you talking to. One thing I'll add too, is I like I mentioned, I did this in an email last week, and I talked about like your storefront. So meaning the backstory was I had to buy a cake. We had a big party last week, and my mom goes to send me to this bakery. Okay, but check this out. This is how my mom told me. Okay, maybe you can go to Honey Bakery. Oh, but there's another bakery. I'm like, okay, where is it? You know where South Street, you go down and then you go right. And then my face is like this now. And I'm just like, yeah. And she's like, I don't know the name of it. I think you go right. Okay. So I'm just like, all right, whatever. Okay. I'll go figure it out. So I go, and then I happen to say, okay, this looked like it was. So I go into this place. It's like a little shopping thing. And I see this bakery with the name she didn't recognize, but I park in front of it, and the store hours say it's open, and it's got like this dingy window. I mean, it was like, what's going on here? Is this even open in business? Is it, kind of like when we went to San Diego summer. And then I was like, looking in.
Oh God.
I was like looking in, like, what's going on here?
Huh.
And there was nobody in there. And I saw some cakes, but and I looked at the window again. I'm like, it is open. And it just made me think. I ended up going to the other place, paying $100 in cash for another cake. That other place could have gotten my business.
Right.
But it made me think, as we apply that same concept to our storefront, which is our social media platforms, is it clear that you're open for business? Is it clear what you're selling?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I had made a comment about was like, that's great that your profile says that you're a boy mom, you have dogs, and you love Jesus, but I don't know what you're selling. Yeah. I don't, I love Jesus too, but I don't know what you're selling, and that's what I think sometimes we have to pay attention to when it comes to like, well, nobody's buying. Well, because people don't know what you're selling. Like, of course they're not buying from you. And if I have to take 2 minutes and go through 30 of your posts, the last 30 posts of yours, to figure out in the mess of your feed what's going on, you have lost people. And this is another thing that we need to look at. Are we losing clients because we are not clear in what is it that we're conveying? Yes. So just some things to think about, what is your, is your profile bio clear? Is that platform meant for you to share, family stuff? And that's fine. I'm not saying don't do that. But if you're expecting people to buy from you based on what's there, it's confusing. And I had to tell a friend about this one time. I'm like, you're a financial advisor, and then you showed your dogs here, and then your cake pops here. And then I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. Yeah. So she cleaned it up, because I was like, you are reviewing portfolios, but all I see are cake pops and your puppies. So something to think about, right? So if you're going to do that, that's fine to sprinkle it. But again, if that becomes so mixed up, then you're sending out a mixed message, and then people don't know what they're looking at.
I absolutely love that, Jen, because I'll give you an example. I have 2 social profiles on Instagram, and one of them is more like my personal page, where it's about fun, it's about wellness, it's about other things. And then the other is about core women, the emotional entrepreneur. It's focused, it's detailed about this specific stuff. And I try and separate the two. yes, I want people to know about my personal side because, like my podcast, Core Women, I start off every episode with touching on personal information of my guest. The reason I do that is because I feel like people lean in, and that's a podcast, though, right? They lean in, and then we get into the professional aspects, their why, their mission, what they're passionate about. And I'd like to go back to something too, because I think that we can be passionate about what we're doing. We can be excited, passionate, but part of leveling up and part of getting really granular about who you're speaking with and your demographic is really about how you're putting your information out there, what information you're putting out there, what research are you doing. I know that when Jen and I, about a little over a year ago, we were doing an event together, and trust me, when I say we research, we actually hit the pavement and we go researching. And so when we find things out that aren't on the up and up, we're like, what's going on here? Remember that, Jen? And it's like you just mentioned the bakery.
How could I forget?
The bakery, and we're looking at this and going, what's happening? There's no lights on in this place, right? So it's like, what kind of goods are you really trying to sell me here? Are you being authentic? Are you being honest? What is it that you're selling? And do you understand what you're selling? Because if your message, if your marketing, if your brand, if your logo, if your website, if your Instagram pages or your LinkedIn pages or your TikTok pages isn't speaking to what it is that you're going to help others with in specific and knowing your demographic, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose them. And so I think that, there's social proof there. And I want to speak to this too. Social proof. Okay. So I see a lot of people out there doing these testimonials, which I think is great. But I also see and I'm going to use an example. So with my podcast, I write content, I do the graphics, I do all these different things for each episode. And some people might be a guest and also do their own social media. Other people might hire somebody to do their social media. And what I ask is, for the social proof, I ask people to share from my posts. Share from my posts, share from my YouTube page, because it's a free service, number one. And I put a lot of time, effort, and energy into the content. But when they come around and say, hey, can we get the recording? Can we publish on our site, on our YouTube page, and get your record? I'm like, no, you'll have to use the link, because that's also going to bring people to your site. So you have to think about what your method is, what your approach is to attract your client, to have that client magnetism, to also leverage your content marketing. And that's about leveraging. Can they mention it in their newsletter? Absolutely. Can they have the graphics? Absolutely. But I'd like to have them continue to point whatever they put out about the podcast to Apple, to Google, to where I am, to my YouTube site, to my website, because that also helps me. So it also helps support each other, right? So Chastity says, Core Women Podcast is amazing. Thank you so much. And then Viviana says, always go back to homemade. I wouldn't give up the raw file either. So I'm not giving up that raw data, right? Because that is, first of all, you don't know how they're going to change it.
Right.
And in what way they're going to change it or use it. And I know that people aren't, that I'm dealing with aren't malicious. They're not, malintended, but you just never know if that's going to represent your brand. So to reduce liability, I keep that raw data with me. Jen?
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the part with the social media. I do want to be clear. I don't want you to walk away from what I said thinking you cannot post personal things on your feed.
Right.
It's how you do it. Like, I don't have a separate thing. It's kind of like, it's a hodgepodge of primarily Facebook is where I put my personal stuff.
Yeah.
But let's say on my Instagram, it's primarily stuff related to what I do. Once in a blue moon, I might throw in there something that's like a little personal. But I definitely will use all the personal stuff in the stories section. I just don't want it all into my feed, mixing up with everything else, creating confusion. So there's a way to do it. But like when I go back to that friend who, it was such potpourri hodgepodge of like posts. It was like, it was that bad that I was like, dude, it's not even clear what you do. So I don't think you know, if you want to be like somewhere and separate, that's fine. But I don't want you guys think that you have to always do that. There is a way to mix it. Yeah. I don't separate it purely because I don't want to create more organization for myself. But it's just how you do it. You know, look at the feed, look at your feed and just take a glance at it. You know, if you're doing it once in a while, it's fine. But again, like my friend, it was like every third post that it was alternating between like, you know, hey, you know, we have amazing portfolios. And then it would turn into the puppy dog and walking in the park and then cake pops. And then I was just like, yeah, this is not working. So just take you know, do an audit and just look at your feed and go, you know, it's fine. Oh, when's it? Oh, how cute. You know, she took her kids somewhere. Oh, how cute. You know, they went, you know, her you know, your pet cat, whatever. But just look at your feed. And if it's still not clear, you know, when you're looking at it, it's like, okay, then start thinking about the content that you're putting out there.
Yeah, I love that, Jen. Yeah, because you don't have to, and I want to piggyback on this. You don't have to create two different pages like I have. I do like separate because I like to be silly. I like to really be silly on some of my stuff on my personal page. Now I don't get as silly on my professional page, my personal page versus my professional page, and so I just like to have fun on that page, and that's just how I do it, right? But if you take a look at maybe our website, right? And something that I learned from another person who has like 4 different businesses. She's like, you know what? When I was coming up the ranks of entrepreneurship and she's like, I decided that I would create an entity for each. She's like, it would have been so much easier if I had this website as long as they kind of ran the same course. We were having the same mission and message and values. She's like, and not create businesses for each of those because I didn't have to. They were really like more like programs, right? So she said, and it could fall under the same website, but I then had to create new websites. I created new businesses. I was like, wow, okay, that's a lot. So when I look at something that we're currently creating, I'm like, no, we're not creating another website. We might have like a different page of, you know, on that website, we may have different material and slightly different colors, but that still align with the brand. But we talk about these things. We really flesh these things out so that we have a better idea of who this is going to speak to. But does it have to be a separate website? Does it have to be a separate? No, this is all part of your branding and who you're speaking to. And you can point that out on social. You can point that out in newsletters. You can point that out in your target, your research. You can research thoroughly about and survey people. So there's so many things you can do to reach your target audience. Let me read a couple of these comments here. So Bibiana says, in the book world, there were some people taking book covers without permission and using music that was so wrong for their genre, like classical piano for sci-fi. It was crazy. Yeah, there's well, maybe lack of alignment, unless that was on purpose. So Bibiana says, they seem to have good intentions, but you shouldn't let outside people curate your brand. You know, unless you're consulting, right? And you're consulting with somebody, and I don't think necessarily take over your brand, but definitely consulting with somebody to maybe give other ideas. And this is what I love about something that we're creating now. We have multiple people on the team, and we have different age groups, different backgrounds. And so when we ask questions like, hey, what's your experience here? What are your thoughts about this? Or what are your thoughts about, you know, this logo that we're creating? What about the brand colors? What about a survey that we can put out? We're all contributing different insight because we have different experiences. What aligns with your brand, you don't have to use everything, but you certainly can use some of the ideas because the ideas are good. And so, yeah, I just wouldn't wholly say, you know, you shouldn't let outside curate your brand. Yeah, absolutely not. But Consult? Yeah, absolutely. You can consult with other people, because here's the other thing that I'd like to mention. It can give objectivity to where maybe you didn't have that objectivity. So like, I'll run something by my husband and he has a totally different way of thinking. It's not that it's bad. It's not that it's wrong. It's actually good in some instances, because he points out things that I totally overlooked. And I was just like, aha, okay. But then I go back to, is he my target audience? Right? So I have to keep asking my questions. Is he my target audience? And then I ask other people to chime in as well, because I'm not here and I don't want to function from a silo. So Chastity says, I must say that puppies would draw me in. Me too. So Mike, Stella, thank you for joining. And Jen, of course. So what are your thoughts, Jen?
Yeah, that was a great point you made about Glenn. It's like, we have to be careful who we ask. It's great to get feedback, but it's how you're interpreting it, right? And I think I've seen this often where somebody will tell me like, well, I asked my mom about it, or I asked my friend, and I'm like, and then they're all butthurt about what they said. I'm like, dude, they're not even the people you're trying to help. I'm like, be careful who you're getting the information from and who you're trying to get feedback from. If you can take it objectively, fine. But, maybe it's always just nice to get a different perspective, but also take into consideration if they do not belong to your target audience, it could also throw you off.
Yeah.
So be careful who you're getting that from. And when you're surveying people, it's sometimes, I guess it's not for me. I don't ask any of my family. So I don't have this problem.
I do like asking him though sometimes, because he's doing he's building programs for the government, and he's doing a lot of similar things. So he works with a large collaboration of people who do, they're selling in a different way, or marketing, I would say. They're marketing in a different way, but they're doing things along the same lines. Now, in regards to like our entrepreneurship process, it looks a little different. He's got a lot of people that he consults with and helps with, but objectively, when he sees things, he picks out things that I don't even see that I might have overlooked. And I'm like, oh, and they just might be technical things, right? Yeah. So with that said, it's like, okay, so, not that I take everything and go and run with it, but it's like, it's nice to be able to think about that and go, well, that's an interesting perspective, right? Yeah. Because most of the time he goes, you're going to overlook what I say anyway. And I was like, but I'm not. I really am not.
But the difference is he's coming from a perspective that is useful. Yes. He may not be the demographic, but it's useful feedback. A lot of times people are asking people who don't know anything about business, who don't know anything about the subject matter. Yes. And they say like, oh, I don't think it's going to work. Well, my mom said she doesn't think it's going to work. I'm like, dude, why are you getting feedback from the person who's totally shooting down your dreams? Yeah. And that's not helpful at all. Yeah, and that's a totally different situation. So I'm talking more like that. But if the person you're going to ask has some valuable feedback, regardless if they're part of your demographic or not, it's still useful. I'm talking about people who are saying things that like you don't even know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Like here's the thing, and I'm going to flop what you just said. It's like I'm going to flip flop this. Because I know, Mike. I ask my wife Karen all the time. I get real good, honest feedback. Like, too wordy, Mike. You know what? That's what my husband might say too, Mike. Like, he's very like to the point. So I'm going to flop this, because even if I were to ask my mom wouldn't say, oh no, that wouldn't work. My mom would be like, yes to everything. Yes, Summer. Yes, I love that. Yes.
The total opposite.
Yes. I'm like, Mom, I love you. And it's like, you know what? It's the mom that loves her child so much that she just, oh yes, Mom. And I'm like, I love you, Mom, but yeah, they ain't going to work. Even I'm gonna go to
like Jen. You couldn't do wrong.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna go to Jen. I'm gonna go to Vivian. I'm gonna go to people who've been doing this, right? So, all right, we have met our 34 minutes actually. So I'm gonna wrap this up. We have covered so much ground. Thank you so much for your amazing comments today. We're always back here on Tuesday. Jen, what's your nugget for the day?
My nugget is on any of your platforms is it easy for somebody to buy something from you? I think that's like a simple thing that you can do an audit on aside from your bio. Do you have something where there's a billion links? Again, what I said earlier, a confused buyer doesn't buy. So is it clear that somebody can buy what somebody can buy from you? And if there is something that can buy from you, is there an easy link for them to click it so that you can make money? So yeah, that's my nugget.
Thank you.
How about yours?
My nugget is, as you're looking at your demographic, you might say, I'm a strategic coach and I can work with companies. But what does that really mean? What is your strategy? What strategies? Get really granular about what that is and your demographic, and please start doing your research. Look at what's out there. Look at the populations that are being served already and how they're feeding into that, if they're still interested, if there's been changes and shifts in the market. So, and those shifts, I mean, you can read that about that on TikTok. You can read about it on Facebook. You can read about it in a newspaper. You could see it on the news. You see the shifts that are happening in our community for many different reasons, but do your research, because you don't want to be caught off guard having done so much work and it to fall flat. We want to help you be as successful as possible. So part of that is, yes, sometimes we love to just jump right in and be passionate about what we're doing, but please do some research. As you continue to do it, it'll help with getting granular and help with really identifying your target audience and really raising your client magnetism. With that said, thank you, everybody. We are going to sign off now, and we're going to sign off with our dance. So are you ready, Jen? I know that you are. All right. Thank you, everybody. Woo!
Thanks, Viviana, my chastity.
Bye, everyone.